Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Karkaria, and thank you for taking the time to speak with me. So you work for Immigration Canada as a migration officer, and you took part in our mini forum, career forum, a couple of weeks ago. So I really wanted to talk to you once again, so you can share with us your experience, and you are recorded for that. So how would you describe your job?
Um, I'm very fortunate to have this job, first of all. It's the one that allows me to travel the world. I've been posted to Kenya, to India, and now here to the UK, and I've visited other countries on short-term assignments as well. It's a job that requires me to make decisions on who gets to travel to Canada, who gets to immigrate to Canada. I make decisions on visa applications. Those could be visitors like tourists or businessmen or businesswomen. It could be international students or temporary workers. And it can also be refugees, people who Canada has selected to provide them with protection. So my job involves a lot of decision making. It also involves supervising a lot of staff, or a lot of staff who assist and help make this happen. It's an international role. Obviously, it's important to know what's happening in the world, and it's a job that seems to have become sort of increasingly high profile in recent years as immigration and migration issues have suddenly become very important on the geopolitical level. So I feel very fortunate to have this position, and it's one that I learn something new almost every day.
Okay, so you were talking about the fact that sometimes it is very difficult to make a decision. So what are the main qualities do you think that are required to do your job?
Uh, Judgment is hugely important. You need to be able to make decisions that you're confident in, and you need to be able to make those decisions quickly. Depending on what type of case you're doing, you might have, 8 or 10 one-hour interviews in a day if you're traveling to a refugee camp and you don't have a lot of time. If you're doing visitor visa applications, those are less complicated, but that means you have more decisions to make. So you might be making 50 or 60 decisions a day. So you have to have confidence in your decision-making ability. You have to be able to process large amounts of information quickly and tease out those pieces of information that are most important to your decision. So it can be quite complex, but once you get into a rhythm, you'll be surprised at how, I wouldn't say how easy it becomes, but how quickly you can make these decisions. But again, just to repeat it, judgment is really key, and sometimes that can be something that's difficult to teach.
Mhm. So yes, have you ever thought doing this kind of job when you were young? Because I think, as you said, it's not the kind of career you can think of. So uh, how did you uh, how did you end up doing this kind of career?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Very few children grow up and saying they dream of being a visa officer. It's not something they dream of, but they might dream of being a diplomat, which I also have at the same time. So this job, I mean, in Canada, the way it worked is that the foreign service exam is an exam that's sat by that's takes place once or twice a year, and anyone in the country can write it, and it's quite competitive. So it starts by writing that exam. And there's very little studying that you can do for it. Again, it's one of those things where you kind of have it or you don't. But if you did want to prepare for it, people tend to have degrees in international relations. You must at least have a university degree. Interestingly, at least for my department, the immigration department, the degree doesn't have to be in a specific subject. So my colleagues have degrees in engineering, in biology, in finance. Myself, I have a degree in history and a degree in journalism. So we come from very diverse backgrounds. But you do have to have that minimum of having a university degree. And if you wanted to better prepare yourself, is just be aware of what's going on in the world. That's very, very important. Have a respect for different cultures. That's also important. Understand not just your own country and the role of your own country in the world, but how other countries function, the political systems in those countries, as well as the factors, the important factors that are pushing people to move around the world and migrate around the world.
Hmm. Okay, so yes, we understand clearly that you really need to keep an open mind when you have when you are embracing this kind of career. So could you share with us one of your toughest moments or one of the most rewarding moments that you have experienced as a migration officer?
I mean, some of the toughest moments I've had is when probably when I've been doing interviews with individuals, and they start lying to me. They're not telling the truth, and they seem to be lying for no particular reason. Like, generally speaking, I'm looking at their case very favorably. I'm close to approving them and granting them a visa and the right to travel to Canada. And then they say something that's clearly untrue, sometimes not even very relevant. But when they start lying to you about one thing, you wonder, well, what else are they lying about? And then you have to keep going with the interview and keep asking questions. And when that happens with a refugee case, you have to take it very seriously, because they might be in a very difficult position where they are, and the opportunity to be resettled to Canada is a once in a lifetime opportunity. They're very lucky to have that. So you want to really make sure you're making the right decision. And probably the most rewarding experience of my life was when Canada made a decision to resettle 25,000 Syrian refugees over a 3-month period in 2015, 2016. And I was fortunate to be part of that effort. And I was sent to Amman, Jordan, for 6 weeks. And we operated out of a giant airplane hangar, and we managed to actually do that and process and accept thousands and thousands of Syrian refugees in a very short period of time. So that was a very rewarding experience.
Oh, yes, I can imagine that. Yes. So thank you once again for sharing all this with us. I'm sure that I don't know if one of our students will be someday immigration officer, but yes, at least it was a really for them a perfect opportunity to understand what you are doing and how useful it can be for a country to have immigration officers. So yes,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. My pleasure. Bye-bye.